Hello, and welcome back to the Richard Taliaferro podcast, where we take a look at career insights and give advice to career changers. Welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is Julie Jakopic. She's a leadership evangelist, helping leaders build resilient organizations and lives they love while changing the world for good. Sociologist and communicator by training, she is a corporate executive, former nonprofit executive director, and longtime government advisor coaching teams across sectors. Equal parts strategic, analytical, and creative, she is recognized as an expert in organizational development, strategic communications, and program design. Julie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be a fun opportunity, I think.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So I'm curious in starting out, like, who do you work with and how do you work with them?
So for the most part, first of all, I think all of us who coach people kind of coach people like us, right? Right. And so I work with folks who are leading organizations in the business of service in some way, often nonprofit executives, often government or elected or appointed leaders, but in the business of service and who have a lot of responsibility and not a lot of peers.
Okay. And how does that, a lot of responsibility and not a lot of peers affect how they work?
Usually when they find, there's two ways people come to me. Either they are those people and they haven't slept through the night in 2 years and they're overwhelmed and they don't have anybody they think they can talk to about it and they're like, on the edge.
Yeah.
Or they're actually out ahead of it, which is actually the way it really should work,
Sure.
right? And they're like, we need a new strategic plan. Let's figure out what to do about that. Or, I'm a new leader in this organization and there's not much, I feel like there's trust issues. How can we help our leaders be stronger? I work with actually with some early leaders because we have a tendency to promote the people who did the doing stuff best.
Yeah.
To leading other people doing stuff, and those are not the same skill.
Yeah, they're not.
Right. So like one of the kinds of organizations I work with do weatherization, right? So they're making homes more energy efficient and they crawl under houses and they measure energy and they measure data. That's their new job as the manager of that team is not to do that. It's to bring out the best of those abilities in the people doing it. And they get promoted and then there's like nothing. And so then they start messing with their team because that's the stuff they know.
Yeah.
And so I've picked an easy example to see the contrast of a construction situation, but it's not all that different in knowledge-based businesses or in government, right? You get promoted, but the stuff you think you're good at is what your team does. So it's really hard to let go of that.
Yeah. And what is that process like for somebody going from being very good in their job to having to lead that team? And how rough is it for them to make the transition from worker to leader?
Well, I think, from what I understand about you, you did it, I did it. Some of us have, some of the things I'm good at came with my freckles, right? I don't know where they came from. I'm just good at them.
Okay.
Right. And people is one of those things. So, and I was in charge really early. I ran a multi-million-dollar Estee Lauder account when I was in college. All the people who worked for me were twice my age. There's nothing like being thrown into it to like learn it. And I think that the age thing was the hardest part for me, was like ordering around my mother, was sort of deciding that, like, how do I, and the truth is, and I'm not very tall, it's pretty easy to look down at me and as half your age and, a foot shorter and go, oh, aren't you funny? So I kind of had to learn to persuade. I had to learn to help people see what was in it for them. I don't know that that's what I thought I was doing at the time, but those are the skills, right? And I think, when I see a Head Start teacher become a leader of a team, that maybe isn't as big a leap as the example I just gave you about going from doing construction to leading construction folks. I think a lot of it has to do with, are you aware that it changed? Like sometimes
Yeah.
that nobody ever said that sentence to you. And that's the light bulb. Sometimes it's like, yeah, but they're doing it wrong. Right. Your problem isn't to fix it for them, it's to teach them to fix it for themselves. What does that look like? And I got one mediocre review. If you ever hear me talk about a boss, it's almost always the same person. It's a guy named Tim Warfield,
Okay.
who I worked for a whopping 18 months. But if I talk about a boss, it is almost always him. And it often goes back to a mediocre review where he looked at me and he said, your whole team knows that you're going to pick up every ball they drop. And if you're going to do that, we don't need them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Mm.
Right. Your job is to figure out what you're going to do when the ball hits the ground. It is not to do their job for them. And he was the first person who taught me how to be an executive deliberately. And that conversation, which is a, easily 25-year-old conversation, is no, right? What's the risk of this particular ball hitting the floor? If it's going to cost us a contract, we're going to fix. Sorry, you got a partner. If it's going to be somebody has a bad day, we've all lived through those.
Sure.
Right. And so it's knowing when to jump in and when not to. And it's letting people fail, which it's funny, I have a manager who works for me now who just can't bring herself to do it. And I'm probably about to have the same conversation. It's like, no, your success depends on letting them fail, which is going to make no sense to her.
And that can be very difficult to hear because if you're a leader, you're a coach, you don't want your team to fail.
No. So pick an easy thing as a teachable moment. Otherwise, thinking about some of our prep for this call, otherwise the thing that fails is big and public and noisy and known. And like if the only thing you can control it a little by allowing people to learn quietly.
Cool. Yes. And would you say give them space to fail?
Some good questions. If they correct their action, great. If I'm trying to come up with some good examples. If a report goes to a client that hasn't been read as thoroughly as it should have and has a mistake. If a press release goes to a reporter with a mistake, that's a whole other animal.
Yes.
Right? So we pick and choose. Thankfully, I'm funny when I talk. I am not very funny when I type. Thankfully. I had an experience last week where I thought I was sending a document back to my team. It actually included the client. And it wasn't terrible, but I know what I deleted. There was a sentence where I was like, this report is stupid, but we have to clean it up. And I knew I had meant that I had deleted that sentence. And so it was like, okay, I was smart enough to take the stupid sentence out. We can say that. We're not putting that in writing. And I almost sent it to the client. Oops. We're all human.
Indeed. And I want to talk just a little bit about mythology. And sometimes we mythologize leaders. We put them on pedestal. As somebody who's coming into a leadership role, how does that person guard against being put on that pedestal?
Wow, that's interesting. I don't know that you completely get to do that. Some people are going to do that, right? And it's if you're really self-aware, you realize that what they're idolizing is the role and not the person in it.
Okay.
That's your responsibility to make that distinction. It's not theirs. And I think that's part of it. I think part of it is finding opportunities to be human. My public self is true to my private self, but as verbal and extroverted as I am, I can shut up.
Okay.
right? So there's nothing public about me that isn't consistent with who I am. But I have a pretty tight-knit circle of who I would actually say that that report was stupid to. Right?
Exactly.
Right? There's a time and a place. And in fact,
Mhm.
this team of leaders, I could do it, and I could do it in a meeting I have in a couple hours, but I'm not, right? But who are the people that I can lose it with? Who can see me with messy hair? Who can I cry in front of? Who, who can I go? I mean, I have a couple of friends and a client. We actually considered going to a rage bar.
Okay.
So we could collectively throw China plates. Right? But who is that circle that we're going to go admit we're that angry to? Because my job is to lead other people. My job is to help this whole team move forward. And there's a difference between this is irritating and we shouldn't have to do it, and here's how we're going to deal with it, and actively screaming, right? There's
Right.
and yet we also need those spaces.
And I can also tell that trust is paramount in a situation like that. You want to be able to trust your team, trust your inner circle to be able to go to that rage bar and, spend an hour or two breaking China, and nobody's going to post it on social media.
Exactly. Right.
Right.
Who knows not to put, I do work with public people, and, we don't take pictures of them with a drink in their hand.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
We might say hello to them in a public setting. There's somebody who I make dinner for because we don't get to go out in our little town and A, be uninterrupted, and B, she doesn't have a lot of safe places that she can be frustrated, that she can vent, and somebody not overhear it. I'm like, I'll make you dinner.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah.
I like cooking. Come over. We'll have dinner here. And I think I'm thinking in particular about two Black women I have worked with who are, both would say they're not allowed to get mad in public because they don't want to be the angry Black woman. And yet both of them have had experiences for which they should absolutely have been livid.
Yeah.
One knows how to find safe spaces. The other, it's actually the first person I coached. I took this class because I wanted to learn stuff and be a better leader, not because I was going to coach anybody.
Sure.
I coached a woman who won her election by 16 votes. It wasn't a primary. At a time that our state legislature was held by the other party, and they wouldn't seat her. They kept doing recounts and things. They wouldn't seat her. The governor, however, was of the same party, and he invited her to sit with him and his team in his booth. What has come to pass is she actually is a historic leader in our legislature now, and she built a hell of a relationship with the governor. But on that morning, 2 weeks in, I was out in California, so for me it was 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, "You want to celebrate anything?" She said, "No. I guess I like my lawyer. I didn't yell at anybody." Like, okay, well, let's talk about that. And we talked through that, and then as the end of the call, "Are you sure you don't want to celebrate anything?" Like, okay, I'm sorry. I need to help you here. You were a 13-year-old page and were homeless, and you wanted to join the legislature.
Yeah.
And you won your first election. You don't get to skip that part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? All the things that are driving you crazy are because a lifelong dream actually happened. And that was the moment where I was like, no, I think I actually need to do this job. Where I was like, oh, she really actually needed that. And I don't know who else would have walked her through that.
And that's amazing. And again, you're right in that some of us don't have safe spaces to vent, to pour our frustrations out. And having somebody like you in their corner is, from what I can tell, is amazing, because you give them that space to be,
and I'll hold them accountable. I'll hold them accountable. Like, clearly I grew up in this town. I don't know if you were somebody who watched The West Wing, but there's a series of episodes where the president is not sleeping and they get him a therapist, who at a certain point says, okay, we're done for the day. And the president said, I didn't say we're done. He said, I know. I did. See you tomorrow. Nobody does that to me. That's my job. Right. To a certain, right. Or, okay, you are now president of the free world. Your father is not going to love you any more than he ever did. And we're not going to fix that. And there is no step up from here. So when are you going to forgive yourself? I can say things like that to people that not everybody can and not everybody would try. And I think and it's a privilege, and hopefully I earned the privilege. And I think, some of our folks are public. Some of them feel public anyway. You lead an organization with 700 employees. You're at work most of the time in one way or another. What you do is public. And so, it's the venting, but it's also somebody holding up a mirror. I have long wondered if a coach was a standing benefit for members of Congress or elected officials, period. And this isn't about me. It's about there is nobody in their lives. And frankly, this is true about higher level executives and appointees. There is no one in their lives that doesn't want something from them. Not a single human. Not a single human.
Right.
And so there's constant demand. There's constant need to be your most public self. And it's not shocking to me that a young, starstruck, pedestal-looking person who believes everything you say, who thinks you walk on water, is attractive. Add some alcohol to that, and you got a problem. And right, when I have some rules about that. Nobody has more than 2 drinks. No, there's always a third person in the room. That is how you solve that, to a certain extent. Right? You leave the bar together. But add a substance to 24/7. Those people, whether we like the decisions they make or not, they are on 24/7. Their jobs require a stupid amount of fundraising. Even if they're working their 40-hour week, they're working another 30 or 40 unless they're independently wealthy. And some of them actually are, but they still need to have a public setting and so their days are long, they're tired, and there's no one who doesn't want anything. There's no one who will hold a mirror and say, you're done for today. Good night. There's no one who will say, really, did you mean to do that? There's no one who will say, everybody expects you to run. What do you actually want to do? Do you really want to run again?
And let's take a hypothetical, and let's say every member of Congress had a coach. What would that relationship look like? Having that, I guess, barrier setter, boundary setter. I mean, what do you think that would look?
Here's thoughts. I do coach a couple of electeds, but in one way or another, but they're different from one another. So, but if I were structuring it up front, from the beginning, there'd be standing meetings that can be canceled. Okay. So it never looks funny when you don't have to worry about getting on somebody's calendar. You don't have to, nobody's taking calls in the middle of the night because there's a space already set for that. If you cancel, you cancel. So for somebody who's watching your calendar, they're not like, oh, she suddenly called her coach. No, she has a standing meeting every Wednesday, whatever it is, right? So there's standard time set that everybody has set. It also helps the coach because they're not getting emergency phone calls in the middle of the night because that's the only time on one project, I literally had a standing Sunday 10 a.m. call with the client, and it was crazy and it was stupid and it was a short-lived thing, but that's when she could be uninterrupted. But then it was scheduled. So it wasn't getting a phone call at 9 o'clock at night between 2 creative, energetic, committed people who stayed up till midnight talking for 3 hours. Sure. That was scheduled for Sunday morning, and I got to go to bed. Right. So a regular schedule that it's normal to talk to that person and normal that everybody has.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a punishment or a weakness. It's a
Mm-hmm.
growth thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the trust issue is probably not really between the member and the coach. It's actually probably between the campaign manager and the coach.
I can see
Because
that. Yeah.
campaign managers often act as coaches, but campaign managers have an oar in the water. They have to win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I can think about really long time ago, Chuck Robb, former senator from Virginia, right?
Mhm.
Who probably shouldn't have run in his last race. He was done.
Yeah.
And there was no space to say, I don't want to do this anymore. And so ran a mediocre race and lost.
Yeah.
And that's not what we should remember about him,
No.
right? But he was done. And it needs to be okay to be done. And then because that's how you have a plan for done. That's not the, oh, I hate it here. I'm not doing this anymore. I mean, it throws communities into crazy too when somebody
Sure.
suddenly decides.
Mhm.
I think I don't know. I think it would, we should all have that safe place, and those people make decisions that affect millions of lives and need it more than the rest of the average Joe.
Right. Because again, you mentioned, being on a, being on a pedestal and being mythologized. And there's something you said to me last week that really stood out to me was that you said that power doesn't change people, it amplifies them. I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering if you could explain that a little bit more for us and specifically for public officials.
Well, I'm going to go in two different directions on that. This particular week, we have two members of Congress who are resigning because of their behavior. They are both sides of the aisle, so it's not about right. They are resigning because of, if they don't, they're going to be tossed by the House. And and we can talk about the politics of one from each party and all of that. That's not the thing that's standing out.
Right.
Their behavior was strikingly similar. And I don't
Mhm.
believe that either of them got up one day in their mid 40s and suddenly became lecherous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to find a word that's not terribly specific, right? My bet is that these were also the bros in college, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
every time they got away with something, they believed the more times you get away with something, the more you believe you're going to get away with it.
Mhm.
And so I do think I don't think they became new people. I think they've had more opportunity, but the traits that brought them to this were always there. At the same point, I look at somebody locally here who um, was on our city council, surprised herself and became vice mayor in her first election, has gone on to represent the city in the state house and recently won an election as a state senator. And she still comes home here and she still lives down the street and she
Mhm.
still has a little girl and she still has a husband who travels and they have to coordinate their time. And um, you know, she didn't change. The things she
Mhm.
works on are the same things. That's why she got elected. Um, she's hasn't had a personality transplant. Um,
Okay.
I think about the person who succeeded her in our state house, who came off our city council to do it, but more importantly, left an important job on Capitol Hill and took $100,000 pay cut. Why? He wants to serve in this way, and this is the way he can do it. And he's pretty sure that he can do some consulting to make up for some of that. I mean, I don't think his intent is to live on a third of what he was making, but I think he is somebody who has sacrificed in moving to this city. He's made decisions about wanting to serve since ever I knew him.
Mhm.
That isn't new. He got a new way to do it. I think, but I think power amplifies in both ways, right?
Mhm.
Like the
Right.
level of service increases, and so does the level of stupid. And I think, you can. I have very little bit, but a little bit of, particularly with folks who did not grow up with the internet,
Mm.
um,
Okay.
believing
Yeah.
that they can get away with stuff a
Mhm.
little bit. At this point, we all have a camera in our pocket. Don't be stupid in public.
Exactly. We carry around a broadcast studio pretty much. And
Right?
so
Like
that's
it's
careful.
just crazy stupid.
Hmm.
Um, I, you know, I don't. type things that I don't want to see in the Washington Post or the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have numerous people who thought their text messages were private. Um, I do have a couple of people I talk to on Signal. Those messages disappear in 24 hours. And that's why we do it. And could somebody really dig them up? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be a
Mm-hmm.
lot of work and it would cost money. And so it's it's a little bit of a protection.
Sure.
But anybody who searches on if they can get to a particular day's data could probably, at the end of the day, we are all public all the time and we just
Yeah.
don't adapt to it. And I think, um, I don't know who said this because it's coming into my head as if it's a quote, but with power comes responsibility.
From Spider-Man. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because I feel like it's a line I've heard, right?
Mm-hmm.
But right, with power
Yeah.
comes responsibility and you can use it well or use it badly. And hopefully people do stupid every day. We've talked about a couple of my
Yeah.
stupid mistakes already in this hour,
Yeah.
but you do your best not to do them and you do your best to have a plan for them. Like
Yeah.
if you know that when you were 25, you did something stupid and somebody can find it, have a plan for what you're going to do when they're going to when they find it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not new. It's news to the world when they find it. It's not news to you.
True. That's true.
It's not
Yeah.
news to you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there feels like I guess maybe the higher up the ladder you go, the air of invincibility gets stronger and stronger. And that you don't,
And so do the risks.
yeah.
And so it
Yeah.
depends on, like, I like to think of myself as fairly risk averse. And in a lot of ways I am. I have a client who thinks I am misrisk
Hmm.
because I will ask questions about the risk they are exposed to. So this is a policymaking client who, I mean, and sometimes it's small stuff. And frankly, in this example, the IT vendor should have known better. Calls me about a client situation in their jurisdiction, which covers millions of people. And I find at some point in the conversation, I was just like, how did this get to you? I mean, I'm happy to help you solve it and tell you what the law says, but how'd this one get to you? And she's like, well, somebody told me because it's in the system. And I'm like, and you had access to individual data in your system? And
Hmm.
she said, huh? Well, we all signed NDAs. I was like, do you want to be responsible for all the records in your system that you don't know? What do you mean? Well, nothing here sounds like fraud to me, but somebody in that database is committing fraud and you have access to the information. Is that responsibility something you want? Get it turned
Mm-hmm.
off. Like
Mm-hmm.
what? I
Yeah.
was like, okay, and
Yeah.
if that one doesn't get you, let's say somebody hurts your sister. You're gonna look in the system for that person's name? Of
Mm-hmm.
course you
Yep.
are. Of course you are. You love your
Yep.
sister.
Yeah.
You don't want access to that information. It puts you at ridiculous risk.
Mm-hmm.
How the IT vendor didn't have all of it is another conversation, right? But
Yeah.
it never occurred to her. She thought she was being helpful, and she was, except the
Mhm.
liability for that agency and for her, it was crazy. So she thinks I'm like that I dream up terrible.
But
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 my job.
it sounds like you are doing the job of a good coach by asking good questions. It's not
Yep.
about being risk averse, it's just being curious, I think.
I have a grand who thinks I am ridiculously curious.
But that's
I took him, so I promised each of the kids that for their 10th birthday we would take a trip, and he's the oldest. And so we had a great time. We went to San Diego and
Mhm.
we swam with dolphins and he got to hang
Nice.
out with uh the pilots on the flight. There aren't that many black airline pilots. He is a
Cool.
mixed race kid. He got to go meet the pilot and hang out in the
Awesome.
cockpit and make noises and do all
Mhm.
the things. And
Yeah.
but he's stuck with me, who's like, so if this dolphin were in the ocean, what would they be eating? Right? Like I have 1,000 questions about anything all the time. And I'm like, aren't you curious? He's like, nobody's as curious as you. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll take that. But it's
Yeah.
true.
Mhm.
I try to go get curious before I get angry.
That's great. I think that's a great way to be, is just, rather than getting upset and using that energy in a bad way, you're using it in a good way. And just in your curiosity when you work with your coaching clients, in a way, you're protecting them as well.
Well, in this case, it wasn't a coaching situation. The case I'm
Yep.
explaining isn't a coaching situation, but I have a coaching client where I do a lot of like, what if, have you thought about what would happen if questions, right? Like,
Mhm.
okay, so that's one way of looking at it. So tell me what this, and I might do a lot, I do a lot of like, okay, so tell me what you think the story is
Yeah.
if the other person told it.
Mm, mm. I like that. I like that
Right.
question.
And then they can empathize in a way that they weren't getting to on their own, which makes it a lot easier to figure out how you're going to lead. I have a client who helped his organization acquire another organization, and the former CEO reports to him. And as you
Mm.
might imagine, it's hard. She used to be in
Yeah.
charge. Now she has a boss.
Hmm.
Now that's hard. And, what's the right level of support and what is something they just have to adapt to? And can you live through their anxiety?
Sure. Sure. And you brought up a great word, which is empathy. And how important do you think it is for leaders to have empathy?
If you asked me for a list of the top 100, the first 30 of them would be empathy.
Okay. Okay. That's all right. That's great to know. So tell me more about that.
So, and I feel like about a year ago, empathy was like, I think sort of in the Doge period, empathy was looked down on as some
Hmm.
form of weakness. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what I find fascinating is that the people who were saying how terrible it was and promulgating fear knew exactly what they were doing because they knew exactly the outcome they were going to get because they could anticipate the feelings of the people they were talking to. I
Mm.
mean, it was such an example of manipulation that and using empathy for manipulation that I was just sort of like, is anybody going to call them on that?
Hmm. Yeah.
Because if you lead from fear, then you are creating situations in which other people will be fearful, which means you have to understand what makes them scared. So even for ill use, empathy is the key to things. Now, most of the time, I want people to
Yeah.
understand what the world looks like from the position of the people they're leading, because I actually think that if you want followers, like people who choose to follow you,
Hmm.
yes, you might have a paycheck involved, not always. People who choose to follow you, there's got to be something in it for them, and that requires you understanding what the world looks like from their chair. And some of us do it naturally. Some of us attend to micro expressions and can read a room in a heartbeat. That's not everybody.
Yeah.
So for some people, it's like, no, really stop and think. So what do we know about this? I mean, and I do this when I teach story and communication, right? Who's the ideal audience? What do we know about them? What do they care about?
Mhm.
Okay, well, now what story is going to get them where you want them to go?
Right. Right.
Right? What do you have to deliver for them to get what they need? I have a
Mhm.
team situation where like they're making me go talk to the big boss. And I'm like, okay, well, you're gonna waste $1,000 on a $50,000 project in this conversation.
Yeah.
First off, right? 10 people in a meeting,
Hmm. Yep.
probably three people in a meeting that make more money, but right, it was three people in a meeting
Sure.
for an hour. I
Yeah.
was like, that's a crazy. So if the goal is it's to walk out with a yes, what do they care about? They care about
Hmm.
how much is it going to cost us to get this little project. They care about what's the likelihood of if we make an investment, we actually win the thing. And I'm like, right. And it was like, oh, okay. So I said, so which facts do you want to share?
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And same is true if I'm trying to get my team to adopt a change initiative that's scary. I mean, one of the things we haven't talked about is how turbulent the world is
Yes.
and how much change is demanded of all of us all of the time. And sometimes people get sick of it. So how do I get people to follow me down the path they don't know because nobody's ever walked it before. Well, what's in it for them? How do I lower the risk for them?
Mm-hmm.
How do I increase the reward for them? And I'm not this transactional in as a person, but I have to understand those as the guardrails.
True. That's true.
How do I make it easy to say yes?
And that's a great question to ask when you're in a situation like that,
Yeah.
because not everybody is going to get what they want all the time. And so how do you make it a win-win? How do you make sure that everybody walks out of the room more or less happy rather than angry?
In some rooms, everybody walked out a little disappointed, and that's the win. Like, I think we're really bad at we talked a little bit about this, I think, but it might have been before we started, but sort of about recognizing that you won something. The people that you and I are working with are used to getting A's. Anything less than an A is failure, and B plus is failing, right? And so an A is normal, and our brains are Teflon for good stuff and Velcro for bad stuff.
Well, that's a great way to put it. And
right?
that's
Like
100% true.
we don't catch the good, and we are great at finding the one thing that went wrong. And I think we got to kind of get better at that. You don't get everything you want, but you don't get anything. You lose 100% of what you don't try for.
True. Exactly.
And so, if you don't ever fail, you don't learn much.
And again, with the people you work with, they're so used to getting A's. Are they so scared of failure that they don't act?
Sometimes I think they don't act. Sometimes I think in this environment, we don't have the privilege of not acting.
Yeah.
I think we have to do the best we can with the information we have at the time. We need to assess the risks, but inaction is action. Inaction is in and of itself an action. This is not the 1700s where it takes a week for a letter to get from point A to point B. That communication happens in seconds. So every minute I mean, I probably do have some like consistent things. Like, somebody's going to tell a story, it better be you.
Yes. Where you are the one who owns the story, so to speak.
Yep. No. Oh God, what's his last name? Crap, I can picture this book cover. It's the attorney that people know from Trump era, but originally the way we first learned about this guy was he was the lawyer for Bill Clinton when he was impeached, and he wrote a book. And the book cover is a legal pad. And on the legal pad it says, "Tell the truth, tell it first, tell it all."
Yes.
Right. And I think that's the strategy. Like, if I blew it, I'm calling my boss and telling him I made a mistake.
Yes.
I'm not waiting for somebody else. And I'm not playing the game of, well, they might never find out. Well, how long you want to live with that anxiety? Let's take the Band-Aid off quickly, tell them, be done with it, move on.
Exactly.
Right. And I think that's hard for people in public life. No one's like, it's embarrassing. No one's ever going to find out.
Yeah. So
they're going to find out. And being prepared, if they never find out and you're prepared, if they do, doesn't hurt you either. And so it may be that you don't tee up the story, but you have it in your pocket the minute you need it. You don't start writing the story in reaction to something else.
Yes. So you're in either situation, you were prepared. And that gives you.
Then you wasted your time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. That's great. And, I think that is a great place for us to wrap up. Is there anything that I may have missed in my questions that you want to add?
Good question. I do think that, we talked about folks who have confidence who get put on pedestals. We didn't talk about the people who get put on pedestals who don't think they belong there.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that sort of some of that is practice on the pedestal and not failing. There's some of that is learned confidence, but some of that is this misperceived belief that people are more different than we actually are.
Absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
I have a friend who years ago, there was some exhibit in DC where they set up like the solar system.
Mhm.
And so there was a big moon somewhere, and there was a big Earth, and there was an even bigger Jupiter, and they sort of laid out where all the planets would be on some, accurate scale. And my friend Tom was like, "You realize from space, nobody's special. We're all the same."
Yes.
Like, and
Yes.
we are. And so
Yeah.
like even if it doesn't matter, the pedestal, I still catch a cold, I still get dirty hair, I
Hmm.
still snap when I'm tired, right? All the same things, and it's amplified. So one of the things is being aware of that, but it's also all those other people you think are better than you aren't any different than you. They also struggle. They
Yes.
also aren't on their A game every day. No, I don't know. I think that might be the
Yeah. They're human just like you. You know, there's, like you said, there's nothing out of the ordinary about them. It's that you're all in, yeah, you have all the same issues and struggles and joys that they do.
yeah.
It's good to remember. So, again, Julie, thank you so much for being on the podcast. If somebody wants to work with you or find out more about you, how can they do that?
They can go to iLeadstrategies.com. They can email me, Julie at iLeadstrategies.com, but any of those things.
Okay, great. Again, Julie, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. I learned a lot from listening to you today, and I hope listeners will feel the same way. Yeah,
I am
yeah,
curious what people are experiencing. And so, somebody wants to ask some questions, I'm happy to.
great. And please, folks, reach out to her. If you're looking for work that works for you, come find me at richardtaliaferro.com. Thanks for listening, and talk to you next week.